Good morning, good afternoon. My name is Dr. Carlos Perez, and I'd like to welcome you to Nova Southeastern University. This is part of a series of webinars. They're titled Shark Chats. Our mascot is the chat, the shark, and this very much includes usually faculty, students, alumni, and today we have the distinct honor of having very special guests. So this is very much about a conversation, and we've had over 100,000 people attend these sessions in the last couple of months. And just to mention, the panelists express their own views. Many of them are experts on the subject matter and or have exemplary experience on the topic. And I can't tell you enough of the audience that's here. Again, my name is Dr. Carlos Perez. I am a gay man. I've been in a relationship for 25 years, and I'm quite proud. And I have to mention that here at the university and at other institutions I've worked at, I've found quite a bit of support. And one of the reasons I stay in higher ed, I think we will be setting the tone for the future. And that's evident, you'll see when you meet some of our students later on. With that, Nicholas.
There. So my name is Nicholas. I am going into my 4th year in the clinical psychology, doctorate of psychology program here at Nova. My pronouns are he, they. I identify as trans and non-binary. I've been involved in the community as a member since childhood, but officially out, visible, proud, and an advocate for the last 7 years. I started as a volunteer with a local LGBTQ organization, serving youth. I became a case manager there. I was inducted into the first cohort of the Maven Leadership Collective, which is a leadership development institute for queer and trans people of color and our allies. Now I'm a graduate student, and I focus my research on working with the LGBTQ community, specifically with trans and gender diverse folks. I have 2 current projects, working with trans survivors of trauma to look at utilization of mental health services, and then collaborating with the Pediatric Gender Clinic up at Yale to develop a group therapy for transgender adolescents and their parents. I am very, very grateful to be with you all today and celebrating with you all. So yeah, thank you so much.
And a bit of your mentor, Dr. Amy Ellis, was scheduled to be here, but she had an emergency. So in part, you're speaking on her behalf for the trauma clinic at Nova Southeastern University College of Psychology. Dr. Mindy Dunnigan.
Hi, everybody. I'm Dr. Mindy Dunnigan. First of all, I just want to thank everybody for being here. It's great that you guys are here to celebrate with us. I'm also very fortunate and thankful to be here as well. I am an assistant professor in the counseling department at Nova Southeastern University. I will be starting my 3rd year here in August. It is great, very welcoming family here. I've always felt supported. I'm somebody who identifies as a cisgender female that is attracted to females. But a lot of times I am mistaken for a straight female. So I'm here to share my experiences and to kind of help those who may be along that same journey as I am. I would say I came out about 5 years ago, but that coming out process doesn't actually stop for me. I have to share those experiences on a daily basis, especially to people who, identify me as a straight female on a daily basis. So I'm here to answer any questions you guys have, and thank you again for having me.
It's our pleasure. Dr. Justin Mackey.
Happy Pride, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. My name is Dr. Justin Mackey, and I'm a licensed professional counselor, as well as an assistant professor here at Nova Southeastern University in the Department of Counseling. My research has been primarily on within group discrimination among gay men. So some areas that I've looked at for discrimination were on age. So there's oftentimes a preferred age within our community, especially among men, as well as looking at masculinity, weight, all these different things. So I'm really excited about that research. Hopefully we'll be doing some publications on that soon. And I just wanted to speak a little bit to the acronym because I get asked about that quite often. Is it LGBT? Is it LGBTQ? And so when looking at the title slide for today, it says LGBTQA. And so sometimes students will ask me, is the Q for questioning or is it for queer? And I say, why can't it be for both? Is the A for asexual or is it for ally? I think it can be for both. So when I think about this and are you part of the LGBT community, I oftentimes tell students and participants in safe zone trainings that everyone is actually part of the LGBTQ community, as long as you support and celebrate who you are. Because if we look at allyship, I think that's one of the most important letters. So if this is a new conversation to you and you want to learn more, we're all on a continuum. Even when we're born gay, we don't know what that means to be gay. And sometimes we don't know what it means to be an ally, but it's a learning process. And so I just applaud everyone for being here, for part of this, and for being part of the community.
Thank you, Justin. Mr. Moore, the future Dr. Moore.
Hello and good afternoon, everyone. My name is Xavier Moore. I am a fourth year, soon to be fifth year student in the clinical psychology PsyD program. I also serve as a graduate assistant for student counseling services and the counselor in residence here at NSU. I think speaking of my experience, I do identify as a Black gay male. I've been in a relationship for some time now, and we're actually soon to get married here in the next few months, pending Corona and everything else coming up. And it's I'm very excited to be here to talk with you all, and of course with the panelists. And I think it's really important, especially as someone who has been setting up their career to become a military psychologist, as I will be commissioned in the Navy here next month, actually next week. It's really important to show that, have that visibility that no matter what area or field that you work in, that you are allowed to be who you are. You are allowed to love who you love. And just because you're in an environment where people will discriminate or degrade you because of who you are, it really shows that at the end of the day that there's a lot of work that still needs to be done, and having conversations, especially like today with the people on this panel, is not only a start, but a continuation of what we need to be doing. So thank you again for being here today.
So we will introduce our community guest, our very special guest, in a few moments, but I wanted to take a moment to tell you all a little bit of an experience. Last Friday, I had the opportunity to host a very important panel discussion that actually went on 2 hours, which just touched on the Black experience in America. I found it was a very informative and session, and it happened to land on the day that was the anniversary of loss at Pulse, which to me was a dreadful day, and also really touched on the issue of people of color. Many these young men and women in Orlando were Latino or African American or from the islands. And today is Juneteenth, and I wanted to take just a moment, and Nicholas was going to join me with a few words to explain some of the thoughts on this.
Yeah, so I just wanted, and we all wanted to kind of acknowledge that the fact that we're even able to have this conversation and have this panel and have so many people showing up during Pride Month, we owe it a lot to the Black and Brown queer and trans women who came before us, whose activism and fight is allowing for us to celebrate who we are.
So please join me in a moment of silence. This is just 19 seconds that I took for the 19th. And I hope that the future will be that we could celebrate this day, and that we could all come together to defend human rights. In the next few minutes, I'm going to introduce a very special group of people. And today this feels a little bit like I'm just having some friends over for coffee, because they are individuals that we've known for many years in the South Florida community. And in case you didn't know this, Fort Lauderdale is the gayest place on earth. So we've got a very special community. We're excited and very proud to be here. And Nova Southeastern University is at the heart of that community. So I think we're going to start with Cindy Brown, my dear friend for many years.
There we go. Hi there, good afternoon. And I'm really grateful to be able to participate in this. And yes, Carlos and I, or Dr. Perez and I, go way back. I've been very involved in the community for decades. I jokingly call myself a professional lesbian. I was involved, very involved in the late 90s with Miami-Dade County repassing a human rights ordinance that was passed in '77 and then defeated. I was the founding director of the current edition of Miami Beach Pride. I produced it for the first 3 years. I currently work for Jewish Community Services, running a program called Lambda Living for LGBT Seniors, which is pretty much an invisible group in our community. I've done a lot of other things. I've sat on many boards. I volunteered. I am of the belief that we are responsible for doing work to live in communities that we want to live in, or to make our communities the kind of communities that we want to live in. And that's how I have been living my life since I fully came out to the entire world in the early 90s. So, I mean, that's a brief thing. I don't know how much more detail that you want me to go in, Carlos, but that's kind of like a brief overview of things that I've done. And, you know, it probably, you know, leads you to how I live my life and why I live it the way I do.
Well, I want to add to that, Cindy. I would classify you as a hero in South Florida. You have worked in so many capacities, and I've witnessed you lead events for diverse populations, and I think it's just an honor to have you here.
Well, thank you very much. And it's an honor to be here with the other esteemed members of the panel.
Now, we're basically just kind of going on alpha order because it's really difficult to decide who. So Cindy starts with S.
I start with a C, actually.
With C, I'm sorry. I'm a little dyslexic. So the next guest that I'd like to introduce, I've had the honor of watching this person establish a presence in South Florida, very much as an artist of performance and glamour and excitement. DJ Diva Power Infinity.
Hey everybody, happy Pride. My name is Power Infinity. I'm the mother of the Florida chapter of the iconic House of Infinity. I am a DJ, I am a performer, a drag performer, I am a promoter, I am a strong, loud, proud Black gay man. And I am very, very happy to be here. I'm humbled to have been asked to be on this panel. I am not very easily impressed. I make the worst fan ever, but I have to say I am extremely honored to be part of a panel of such really amazing people. And I mean, I really have just met most of these people in the last maybe 30 minutes, but I am like wowed. You know, living our gay life is a journey, and one that for many people now, they take for granted, because right now we have so many doors open to us. We have so much progress that has come our way. But I do remember growing up as a West Indian child. I'm from the island of Trinidad and Tobago, as a Seventh-day Adventist, which is a very deeply religious religion. And as a Black man, 3 strikes against me when it comes to, you know, being, accepting myself as gay. And it was a long, hard road. I cried many tears before I learned to accept myself, but here I am, fabulous as ever. I don't have an academic doctorate like so many, but I have a master's in fierceness. And we have come a long way, but we still have miles to go before we sleep. So, you know, conversations like these really help to progress our movement, and let's stay focused on that. Thank you guys so much for having me.
Master of Fierceness. I think that that's marketable. I don't know, but you can certainly join us for a master's in psychology counseling. We could set you up right here.
Let's do that.
Shawn Palacios, aka Kitty Meow. Before you start, I have to say that when I was in Michigan, at the University of Michigan, I came down to South Florida, and I absolutely fell in love with your stage presence and the balance of and the departure from norms, and to find your artistry inspiring. So I said, I need to come to Florida, and I had the privilege of doing some things with you in many years. So I'm so excited to join you and to have you come into our university. Shawn Palacios, please tell us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Shawn Palacios, aka Kitty Meow. I'm originally from Nassau, Bahamas. I moved here many, many moons ago to study in high school, and then I went on to college. And then after graduation, I didn't go off to, you know, pursue my goals or my, you know, I just wanted to be a drag queen. No, just kidding. But I moved to Miami Beach in the early 90s. It was a really amazing bohemian scene going on there. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of it. I currently am working in entertainment. I sometimes am presenting it as Shawn Palacios. And well, on a call yesterday, someone said, "Oh yeah, he's formerly Kitty Meow." So I mean, I take it in stride. I'm grateful to be here today to exchange thoughts and learn from this unbelievable panel. Thank you, Dr. Perez, for having me here. And hello, everyone, and thank you for having me.
This is quite exciting. Our next, the next panelist that I'll introduce is a gentleman who has led the way in media and worked for a number of years, and I'm going to allow him to introduce himself, but he's actually one of the first, he interviewed me years and years ago in Miami, so it's really a privilege for me to interview him today and include him in this panel. Steve Rothaus, please tell us about yourself.
Well, I'm Steve Rothaus, and I was a reporter at the Miami Herald from 1985 until February of last year. When I retired from the Herald, I was a student at FIU when I got my job first part-time and then became full-time at the Herald back in '85. And, you know, through the years, I've covered lots of different beats. I covered cops. I was the Key West reporter for about a year and a half. But in 1997, I began covering LGBTQ issues. Back then, you know, I became the gay issues reporter. And, you know, that was a very unusual beat for anyone at a mainstream newspaper. There were no other people who were doing what it is that I began to do. And it all started basically the summer of the Versace murder in Miami Beach, when Gianni Versace, the fashion designer, was killed on his steps of his home on Ocean Drive. The international press came to Miami to cover the story, and the Herald suddenly realized that we had no one who was able to cover our community, with the authority that someone, like I could bring to this beat. I was at the time the co-founder of the South Florida chapter of the National Lesbian and Gay Journalists Association, NLGJA. I was out for most of the time that I had been at the Herald, so they felt comfortable to come to me and say, would you be interested in doing this and covering this beat? And it was something that I, had really wanted to do, but the Herald wasn't ready at that point in the early 90s when I first wanted to. I was covering some stories, but other people were doing it as well, but it really was not the right time to suggest that this be a full-time beat. They had to really kind of figure out for themselves why it was important, and they did back in 97. And the only condition that I put on my taking the job was that my stories run the entire run of the newspaper, that they not zone the stories to Miami Beach or wherever they thought the gay people were living. And keep in mind that back in 1997, the Herald circulation was more than 500,000 a day. So we were talking about a lot of people. But, I covered the beat and had some wonderful experiences from that point through all of the national issues that I got to cover, such as military, such as marriage. And that's why listening to Xavier speak this morning, that, he's joining the military and he's going to get married. And, I just thought, how wonderful this is, but that it's only been 10 years since, that you were able to do that. In the first 13 years that I covered LGBT, I wrote stories about why, the fact that people couldn't join the military, or the fact that we couldn't get married, or that we couldn't adopt children in Florida. I mean, so much has changed. And of course, this week, another landmark decision by the US Supreme Court that, it's a great time for us to be able to have that conversation today to talk about what that means. But, there are people who say that ruling earlier this week is actually more significant than the marriage ruling of 6 years ago. So lots have changed, but we also obviously have much to do, but the framework is there, and that's what's so exciting. It's there for us. And I appreciate being here today and look forward to having this conversation.
Very good. And I wanted to start off with a really light question. I'm kidding. Is there ethnic or racial or other forms of bias in the LGBTQ community?
Yes.
Absolutely.
You saw how quick I answered? Yes, there is.
Elaborate. Tell us a little bit more of what you have observed.
Well, it's something that I think that most people that have the common sense that God gave a billy goat would know, but I have really noticed it even more so in these times with the whole new focus on our racial tensions, with the whole new focus of our movement. I have been absolutely floored and surprised to see some of the actual bigotry, racial ignorance, if not just pure out racism that has shown itself and revealed itself in and among our own community, which is astonishing when you think of the fact that we as a community ourselves, even though I feel the Black struggle and our LGBT struggle are exclusive, but they're still linked, inexplicably linked by the same oppression, which is bigotry. So I feel that we really need to take this time to look within ourselves and among ourselves to have a deep conversation and some real accountability with our own racial bias, because it really does affect us. It really affects people of color, and I don't really see how we can truly move forward if we don't recognize that we're still all one despite our differences. Black people face a lot of inequality. We face a different degree of inequality than even our gay white counterparts. So I just think that it's really important that we all recognize the racial bias within our community. And I mean, from everything from just realizing that Black lives really do matter, to the way that we look at our ads. I'm from the club scene, so I'm just going to take this from a club perspective. When you look at ads in the club scene, by and large, standardly, the ads for gay clubs and or gay circuit parties are usually white men. Now let that soak in. It's usually white, beautiful, but still white men. That is still our standard of beauty in the gay community. And we all know that beauty comes in all shapes, all sizes, all races, all cultures, all creeds. But we still push and promote one standard of beauty. This is a very subtle, but has been a very constant and consistent symptom of the racial ignorance and racial bias that we still have here in our own community. And I think it's time we take a look at that.
Very well said. I salute you. Perhaps Justin, I think you know a few things about this. You are a professor in the College of NSU College of Psychology in the Department of Counseling. You've done some research on this subject, haven't you?
I have. When I was looking for constructs regarding, within group discrimination, race was one of them that I wanted to explore because I was studying at Auburn University, which is very close to Atlanta. And I remember going over to Atlanta to the gay club scene, and it was Black Pride. And they said, "Oh, what did you come up here this weekend for? This is Black Pride. Like, we don't celebrate that." And I was like, "What?" And then there was another gay bar because I was trying to find out which gay bars were available. And they said, "Well, that one's a Black gay bar." So there was that discrimination. And then one of the items that really stood out to me in my research was I put in there, I have been called like derogatory names because of my race at a gay establishment. And 79% of the participants in my research identified as white. And so it really skewed the entire results to almost nothing. But when I broke it down, only 3% of whites said that they have heard a racial slur at a gay establishment, whereas it was 55% of the Black participants. That's 18 times more. And so it's just constant, like Power was saying, when even, like down here, there's terms that are thrown out all the time, and there's fetishes. I would say that race within the gay community is oftentimes fetished. Whether it's Asian, there's a stereotype that they're oftentimes bottoms, and if it's Black, that it's fetished for other reasons with that. And I think it's just really, really sad, and we need to have that conversation. And I know Grindr is a gay app, and they have recently, from what I've been told, changed the settings so that you can't search by race, ethnicity, because the blatant discrimination about it's just a preference and it's not racism is a common cop-out that I hear all the time.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, gay white men in particular, and, I have heard through the years, gay white men make derogatory comments about women. Certainly, trans people, Black people, people of color. I think in Miami, perhaps we hear less of the, sexualization of Latin men, because there are so many Latin men here who identify primarily as not being people of color. But you go elsewhere, go out of Miami, and you're going to hear the same kind of talk of the fetishization, I suppose, of Latin men, the way we were just talking about Asian and Black men. But there's a lot of work to be done, and I think that at least what I've realized is that we are everywhere, we are every group, and we share as much racism as any other group, gay or straight, LGBT or not. And we have to own that, and we have to work on it.
I'd like to speak a little bit about ageism, because that is also a very serious issue in the LGBT community, primarily in the men's community, because there's so much emphasis on beauty and being young. And it's a total disservice to older men who are fantastic. And it's definitely something that, if we can start bringing it to light now. I think it's really only been recently that LGBT seniors are much more visible. There's more programs for seniors. And by the way, when I speak of seniors, I say LGBT. I don't use the Q, out of deference to many of them find that word a very derogatory word. But it's a pervasive issue, and I think that we need to start respecting our elders and not treating them as throwaway people.
I kind of wanted to speak on, I guess, the lesbian side of this as well. A lot of you guys spoke about gay men, and I think that racial issues also exist within, the lesbian community as well. Kind of going back to Atlanta, that's where I'm from. I went to many of the, bars there that were predominantly lesbian bars. One that I had gone to several times. I went there one evening, and before I went in, the bouncer was looking at my ID, asking me and a friend of mine, are you sure you want to come in tonight? Yes, I've been here before, not really understanding what they meant. Went in, and it was a Black female night. I went in there, still got a drink, and while I was there, I was asked to leave. So even though, I'm still a part of the LGBT community, I was still asked to leave in that setting. So I think that it exists even within the lesbian community as well.
I see a question in the chat regarding older LGBT folks having to go back in the closet. And that is a real serious issue. Many nursing homes have it. There is certification that SAGE does for nursing homes. And even when a nursing home is SAGE certified, that means the staff is trained. But many seniors are bullied by other residents. If you're a bully in middle school, you'll be a bully in the nursing homes. And I actually know of one man who was out his whole life. And he said to me, I've never been in the closet until now. And it was heartbreaking. He had to actually make up a family. So, I think that as more people are becoming aware now, that hopefully the acceptance level as people grow and become professionals will be greater than it is now, just because it's so much more out there and accepted than it was, 20 or 30 years ago. So,
Cindy, I think that it's important to point out that we are seeing many more older, particularly gay men, than we saw 15 or 20 years ago, because AIDS decimated an entire generation of people. They didn't get old. So these were, men who died in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. And so now we're seeing as many older people as we saw when they were younger, and they're out and they're visible. And that's something that's new for even for us.
Okay, so responding to the panelists referencing racism and bias in our LGBT community, I'm turning 50 this year. For many years, when I was really, really popular and would get invitations to go places, I would always get invitations, but they would say, you can come, but we don't want you to bring your best friend who was a drag queen. What is that conversation gonna sound like? When are we gonna actually start the conversation and start the communication? Because I went to Publix right at the very beginning of the last election. Okay, and so this is Publix at 5 Points in the gayest city in the world, and I was with my friend whom was in a one of the handicap mobiles, and she accidentally struck a young man, or just bumped into him, and he was so horrible to her, and he was saying so many nasty things, and I was like, that is no way to speak to a lady. So I stood up to him and I said this, I couldn't let it go. Even though we were together, I figured if I wasn't with someone, I would say something. If I wasn't with her, I would say something. And he spun around and he says, you people are all the same. And of course I said, well, you people, what are you talking about? Yes, I mean niggers. And that's what he said, he used the N-word. And so I made this post on social media. Now I can put up a dog running down the street on one leg and it will get 100 likes, 200 likes, just random silliness. And when I mentioned that on Facebook, I probably had about 4 or 5 people that comment on that. When are we gonna start to have the open discussions about race and bias in our community? Because it hurts me. I'm turning 50 this year. I mean, come on, like when are we gonna change? When is it gonna start?
And I would like to kind of chime in for like the folks on the trans and gender diverse side. Like we need to be having these conversations because like by and large, trans women of color are being murdered at alarming rates, and we're losing our community, we're losing our people, and it's because we're not having those conversations.
Yeah, every day I turn on the news, someone else is being beaten in from the members of our trans brothers and sisters are being beaten in the street. We cannot allow that to happen because that is oppressing a certain particular demographic, a certain group, but it's all of us that's affected ultimately when you think of it. I think we need to start working on things now. You know, this is extremely helpful. This rocks. I'm so grateful. We got to make sure more people hear about it or know what our intentions are, right?
Yeah. One of our panel, one of our viewers, Robin Helms, writes, and maybe Nicholas can answer this or anybody. She says, I am an ally and relative of a transgender parent who came out in her 60s, who we love dearly. What advice do you have for transitioning as a relative, as this is a transition for her, but all of us? Advice.
Definitely. I think that the first step is like asking that question really and showing the support, because all of the research indicates that a supportive family results in better outcomes across the board when you have a great support system. The things that you can do are really just asking what is needed before doing anything. Like you can always like read up, you can always engage in media, following, there are lots of activists, there are lots of trans and gender diverse activists and producers of media that you can engage in, but also just asking that person, what do you need from me? What can I do to be the best support that I can be for you? Because even just asking this question, being here at this webinar is showing that that support is there, that you're trying, and that's the most important thing.
Just to go into a few different topics, I want to turn things around a little bit and ask our panelists to maybe mention someone that inspired them when they were a kid or when they were in their youth. Is anybody inspired you?
I'll speak to this a little bit. When I was growing up, my father was always involved in the Rotary and this service group and that service group. And when I got to be a young teenager, I grew up Episcopalian, and I got involved with, you know, the youth group, and then I was on the board in the whole diocese of Miami. And I really believe that those experiences that I had helped mold me to be the activist that I am. You know, the involvement, reaching out, you know, going beyond my own. You know, of course, later in life, he started watching Fox News, but that's beside the point. But in terms of, you know, commitment to my community, I learned that from my father.
I'll chime in as well. I think for me, it was really two people. One of them being my late grandmother. One of the biggest, I guess, fears of mine was that whether if I was to come out, and her, as well as my family being very religious, that at the end of the day, that her and my mother, who I'm very close to, wouldn't accept me. And I think she helped break within myself that stigma of being religious and being a part of the LGBT community, and sharing that just because you're religious doesn't mean that you are against, or that you hate, or that there's this, that you have to fear, or any number of these things. Like it's that you can be a Christian, you can be a Protestant, you can be religious or spiritual in your own way and still support, love, and be a part of the LGBT community. And that was something that I deeply valued from her. And even though I was not able to truly share my thoughts and feelings with her before her passing, I think that is truly a legacy that lives on for her. And I try to exude that to others, which is part of the reason why I really enjoy my position now, being able to help students have similar conversations. And then, of course, my mother, at the end of the day, she was asking me when I was a child of like, I just want you to know that no matter what happens in this life, that I do love you, that you are valued, and not only being a future Black man, but being a part of the LGBT community, you're basically going to be walking with a target on your back. And just know that there are people out there who care for you. There are allies. You have your mother, you have family members, not all of them, but you have enough of them who will be there for you to support you through thick and thin. And that's something that I'm tearing up. I can't even put a value on that experience and those words that she shared with me.
So Pride Month, June is Pride Month, and this is a celebration that was honoring, it's now the 50th year of Pride, and this was a reaction to Stonewall. They were riots that occurred over several days. And I have to mention to you that the Miami Pride was first granted and came from a historically Black church. The AME Church in downtown Miami provided the first grant to Miami Pride, which then had a little bit of a quiet period, and we saw that Miami Beach Pride came up, and Cindy Brown, who's here today, was very much a part of that. I just wanted to mention that because I think there is that relationship, and it's important for all the communities to come together to stand up for human rights. But my question for you is, do Pride events benefit the community?
I'll speak to that. You know, when I was, you know, I got to create Miami Beach Pride from scratch. You know, I always said, oh, I had to create it from scratch, but I got to create it from scratch. So one of the really wonderful things was that in 2009, it was year one. For so many prides that got across the country, 2009 was year, 30, 40, whatever. So the pride in 2009 was reflective of the community in 2009. And I made a concerted effort to include everybody. I went and had focus groups with different community groups, different groups of people to find out what they wanted. And that first year, I think it was, people said, oh, we don't need a pride. We haven't had one in 11 years. Who needs it? But that morning, the community came out in numbers that we had no clue to expect. And at that moment, we realized that absolutely pride means something to the community. And I had so many people come up to me and thank me. And I had seniors who, because we specifically did something for older people and people who had been together for 25 years and more. And these folks up there who were in their 70s and 80s were so thrilled that they looked out and there were families and young people and little children. And that was unheard of in a pride before. And by the same token, the youth came up and said, it was so amazing seeing those, older gay people, because now I have a concept that, we continue to live. So, from my point of view, and it's probably biased, but I think that pride events are essential for the community. And given this situation with COVID, I think that these kinds of programs are really important. And, there every Friday night, I think that a group of prides does like a happy hour every Friday night. Yeah. So Shawn, you can talk more about that, but yes, pride is very important to the community.
Absolutely. A few weeks ago, Matt Silver and the group from Miami Beach Pride got together with everyone and said, let's establish something called the Pride Collectives, which was Palm Beach Pride, Gay 8, Fort Lauderdale, Miami Beach, and I think, and Stonewall. And so what we did was we had a 2-day marathon of entertainers, everyone from Alvita to the most famous drag queens all over our planet, and we raised considerable amount of money. I don't know how much. I don't want to quote the exact amount, but it was so important for our community because what Pride Fort Lauderdale did, we estimated we were going to take about $2,500 from the overall funds raised. We immediately went back to the street and bought food and hygiene supplies for our community. We also do scholarship programs where you can apply to our organization and we grant you up to $1,000, $1,500 in funds. So, pride is so important and so vital for our historical references and also just the evolution of us moving forward.
Yeah, I would just like to say that, Cindy, what she and the others did back in 2009 was so important in our community because, yes, we had circuit parties and we had lots of events, mostly for gay white men. But what Cindy put together, it was free. Nobody had to pay. It was, everyone was welcome. Everyone was welcomed. And that's why what it's become, hundreds of thousands of people today who come. And it's just mostly from Miami-Dade County and parts of Broward and perhaps the Keys. But this is really a Miami event. This is not, 2,000 gay men coming in from New York and Los Angeles to dance and have a party. But, it's a week of events now. And, you know, this year, obviously, what, you know, Kitty was talking about in terms of being able to do virtual Pride and be able to raise money for these groups, you know, but I think that it's so essential to our community to have role models the way Cindy was able to do, to show these legacy couples that people, even before we could get married, that we could see couples who were together for 40, 50 years, some of them, and to be proud and to know that their families accepted them or not, but that they accepted themselves and they had friends, that these were not lonely people the way we were all told it would be. And you can't, you know, really, you know, minimize any of the work that was done by that Pride committee that year. I mean, there were people who had attempted Pride in South Florida, and we kept hearing, well, people didn't come because it was too hot. So like, all right, so we don't do Pride in June, we do it in April. But, you know, knowing that the first year there were thousands of people there with no model to really before it, and that now it's more than 150,000 people who come over the course of a week. It's just amazing.
Justin, go ahead.
I was just going to say, I think that Pride is super essential because we haven't talked much about the internalized homophobia. And I think a lot of times, like, that is such a process, the coming out. And what Robin was talking about too was when I was deciding to come out, I thought, what is this going to do to my family? Like, now they have to come out as being the parents or the siblings of a gay brother or a gay son. They are forever going to have to do this process as well in the coming out. So we want to like celebrate with them. And this is an opportunity for people to get exposure to like all forms of life. So when you go to Pride, you see other families that are supporting their trans son or daughter. And it's like that's so essential. And I remember it took years for me to go to a Pride because I was like, I don't need that. I'm simply a man who is attracted to men. Why do I need to be part of the gay community? And I hear this all the time from guys is like, I'm out, but I'm not part of the community. And I think that comes from just like this internalized and this continuum. So moving from acceptance to advocate and acceptance to like doing social justice work and just the amount of exposure that a Pride festival and gathering does for that is mind blowing.
I would like to talk about the contribution that Prides have to our community and to our movement. You know, Prides are very vital because Prides give us visibility. That visibility gives us a platform. That platform gives us a voice. That voice gives us power. That power gives us change. And for our community, that change equals progress. So these are all, and I swear I didn't write this before I got on. I just thought of that was spur of the moment. But I mean, these are things that, these are the benefits of having a Pride. And I don't know about any of the other panelists, but I know for me, there's just the day of Pride for me, especially because of my journey, is so empowering because it's a day that I can be surrounded by the celebration of love, of life, of laughter, of dance, and a celebration of me and who I am. I mean, if I could be omnipresent on that day, because I want to hit every stage, every party, every parade, everywhere. And you know, a lot of Prides are spread out because there's so much going on and you just wish that you can be everywhere at one time, but child, there's only one day. So, and there's only one you. But I mean, Prides, if people have not attended them and if people feel the same way that that was just described, you know, that you're out, you know, as Dr. Justin said, you're out, but you're not part of the community. Trust me, going to a Pride will really make you see what being a part of the community is all about. There's no feeling in the world like it.
So, some of our folks might not know what Pride is. So Nicholas, sorry to cut you off, but if you could give some people some ideas too, why that is something that is a phenomenon that's occurred.
So I think Pride, sometimes we think like Pride, it's just this like parade and that's it. But Pride is really an opportunity for organizations, for community to come together. There's a lot of nonprofit work that goes into Pride parades and to Pride events in general. They're a great opportunity, like Power said, for visibility. A quick anecdote that I wanted to share was that the year that Pulse happened, I was a case manager and I was working with LGBTQ youth, and it happened and Pride was coming up, and they were like, we don't know if we want to go. We don't know if we feel safe. We're not sure. And I can't explain the feeling to you of going to Pride that year and seeing these kids, like, watching Pride still happen after that tragedy, after basically the message that you don't deserve to exist was put there. Pride came out and said, we still exist. You will not stomp us out. We are here. And I had kids crying, and it was just such a powerful experience of, this is your community. We are still here for you. We still love you, and you still matter.
I see a question from a middle school counselor. I don't know if it's in South Florida, but the Miami-Dade County and Broward County schools have very good, LGBT programming for students in there. JCS is in the Miami-Dade County schools. And the person who runs the LGBT programming, the youth at JCS, is named Randy Adler. So, I mean, if you want resources, I recommend reaching out to her at Jewish Community Services of South Florida. And, she can provide a lot of support and information and resources about working with unsupportive parents for LGBTQ students, whether one parent's supportive and the other parent isn't, and they're divorced, which is often the case. And there are other resources. There's an organization called PFLAG that has chapters all over the country, and I recommend that you Google search them, and you can connect with the PFLAG, which also has resources, and perhaps you can recommend recommend the parents go to the PFLAG meetings, because then they'll be with people who are going through the exact same thing. So there are resources out there. And if you want to send me an email, it's cbrown@jcsfl.org. cbrown@jcsfl.org, and I can connect you with some resources.
So let me touch on a point or a question by one of our attendees. She was referring to Dr. Mackey, well said, internalized homophobia, and needs to be addressed and researched more. This is a light question for you. Nature versus nurture. What is it?
Nature.
Definitely.
I mean, when I was much younger, I had a crush on my cheerleading coach. Yes, I was a cheerleader. And I didn't know it at the time, but as I got older, I realized what that was. I had this huge crush on her, and that was kind of like my first love, if you will. But I'm nature all the way.
So am I.
Yeah, I am too. I would say it's nature as well. I think the nurture side of it helps people, express themselves more. That environment may help them, come out who they are easier. But I definitely think it's a nurture.
If it was nurture, then I would be a homophobe and a transphobe, because believe me, the way I grew up, my parents, my schooling, my religion were all focused on me not, looking at homosexuality as an abomination, as a sin. And despite all that, I still turned out gay and fabulous. So it's definitely, it's definitely nature for me all the way.
I just want to make one other comment, and this kind of addresses the nature versus nurture question. And people use these things interchangeable, but when people say sexual preference, it's not a preference. Sexual orientation, that's how we are oriented. So if you have been using sexual preference, it's not a preference. It's not like I can say, okay, well, I'm going to choose to be straight today or whatever. It's not a preference. And if you see people using it, please correct them.
Yes.
And I see someone wants my email again, cbrown@jcsfl.org. I'm also on Facebook. You can look me up.
Type it for him, Cindy.
Can they, all attendees can see?
Yes.
Oh, here we go. Okay, perfect.
You're welcome to post the questions. We're approaching our last questions. I want to address one question for you that before we start losing people is, I know that because we do this series quite often, we have many professionals, psychologists, school counselors, mental health professionals that subscribe to this series. And they are very much allies and members of the community themselves. What can allies do to support the LGBTQ community?
I mean,
I would say the first thing, I mean, there's many things that can be done, but the first thing I think the allies can do is speak up and make a public stand in solidarity with the LGBT community. That is the first and probably the most important thing. Supporting us from the back, all the way back there, and saying, yeah, child, I agree with you. You know, I stand with you, but in public, not saying anything, not having those conversations with other straight people that might not be as open-minded, that really lends to the challenges that we face. So the more that we have these open conversations, the more that everybody is talking about it and standing in solidarity with their friends, the more normalized we become. And the more normalized we become, the less of a threat we are, the less of a threat our movement is, the less of a threat our simply wanting equality is. So yes, the first thing that you can do is speak up publicly and stand in solidarity with those of us that are your friends.
I mean, I think when you hear somebody say something, speak out. I mean, it's not just getting on Facebook and saying, oh, this is Pride Month and, put some rainbow colors out for them. But when you hear somebody tell a joke or use a slur, I mean, to say that's not funny, it's not acceptable.
And many of them have never been told that. People are afraid to say, hey, that's not cool. Same thing about, the derogatory comments about women. If you hear people say things, say, hey, you know what? That's not cool, and this is why. And you may bring someone over to the other side.
And if I may add, I actually had a conversation with a concerned, kind of not concerned, just questioning parent regarding their students who the student had came out to the parents a few months earlier and was worried that she felt like she was having to walk on eggshells, and so she asked me, because I was there helping students get acclimated, and she asked, like, what can I do? And I said, well, when it comes to this is your child, and at the end of the day, validate their experience. Recognize that despite everything, that they're still your child, they're still here, they still love you, but they're coming to you because they trust you to recognize who they are. And then, as many of the panelists have shared, of going forth and taking action to your own hands and pointing out discrimination when it happens, whether it's family members, whether it's friends, whether it's strangers. I said, really, truly encapsulate being an ally in everything, not just supporting on social media, but physically saying something, standing up and being proud of your child for who they are, and recognizing them is going to do wonders for them, especially as they start this new unknown journey of college.
I'd like to add just a little piece about what allies can do further is education. I like to call it education and exploration. So not only educating yourself just on the community, on what's going on, consuming the media, reaching out, reading books, watching documentaries, they're free. Some of them are available on Netflix. If you have Netflix, there's some great ones there. But also exploration. Go out into the community, like go meet people, go to events, like talk to people, because by and large, we're pretty friendly people. We're pretty nice. And, you know, if you have somebody in your life, it makes it personal to you. You know, then it becomes somebody who you care about, somebody who you love, and you understand that we're all just human beings and we all have this experience of being human beings that we can share.
For Pride Month, I would suggest that everyone just volunteer. It is expensive to produce. We travel to prides all over the country. We take all of our miles. We go to different cities, Pride Fort Lauderdale, that is, and we volunteer. We clean the toilets if they want. We run backstage if they want. My roommate runs accounting. I mean, you know, if we all stay in one hotel room. It is miserable as heck, but, you know, we've traveled, we've learned from different organizations, and we come back to our own hometown and we realize that's what we need most. It's for people to want to become involved, to galvanize the troops. We need volunteers.
So we're running over time, and we can continue our conversation a little bit, but I want to give a shout out to Banush and Alex. It's so wonderful to hear your comments, see your comments. And I want to give our panelists each an opportunity to give a final thought. And I want to give a final thought with a statement very timely: Black Lives Matter. Panelists, any final words?
United we stand, divided we fall.
No one is free until we're all free. And if the LGBT community wants people to stand with us, we need to stand with them.
You know, it's the very same conversation that we've had with, you know, people about why gay people, LGBT people need to support trans people. So many times I've heard people say, but that's not me. And it's like, well, no, it's not you. I mean, but that doesn't mean that you can't identify with and support. I mean, it just what we all want people to expect is that it's to be treated with the same respect that we want. And no, it's not the same. And part of what we have to do is the messaging that the difference between sexual orientation and gender identity. I mean, that these are two different things, and it's not the same thing. However, the same people hate all of us. And that's the reminder that when we, you know, support each other, we are doing that. We're supporting each other. And we're all different. Men are different from women, who are different from trans men, different from trans women, and, you know, the cis men versus, I mean, we're all different, yes, but we all are the same. And we all have the same needs and same wants, and, you know, if nothing else, just to be respected and to be just treated for who we are.
One of my favorite quotes is, diversity is our strength, unity is our power. And I think, especially now in these challenging times, I think that quote is even more important. I would like to echo what Dr. Carlos said and add to it. Black Lives Matter, but all Black Lives Matter. And I think that's important to be said because a lot of our, the Black, gay, lesbian, bisexual, pansexual, transgender, and everything else in our community feel disenfranchised by the Black Lives Matter movement. But it's important to note that those Black lives are just as valuable and just as important. So all Black lives matter. Amen.
Last chance. Last words. Okay. So I have to end off by saying a very much thank you, Cindy, Power, Shawn, Steve. It is an honor to have you here at Nova Southeastern University. You are honorary Sharks. I hope you come visit us someday.
Yay.
I'm right here in Davie. And for our faculty, staff, and students that are here, thank you so much for joining us. It's been a great opportunity. We've had wonderful comments coming through. And let's continue this. Justin, this was actually your idea because you said we didn't do anything last year and we wanted to make sure we did. So thank you, Justin. Thank you all. Thank you, those attending. And remember, Nova Southeastern University, we are a very full university and at the College of Psychology, we offer bachelor's, master's, specialist, and doctoral programs. We're one of the largest programs in the mental health professions in the nation, and NSU is one of the largest producer of minority doctoral degrees. Come visit us in Fort Lauderdale as soon as you can, and maybe come move down here. It's a great place. The gayest place on earth. Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you. This is great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.